An Unexpected Future by A-Series on AO3. Chapter 4. Spiked Boots are best bought online. What about this one? Present, call me Yamada when I'm off the clock. Mike held up another green neon shirt with a hideous pink design on the front. Five eyes twitched. Yamada had to be fucking with him. Five had a hard time deciphering Yamada's manic smiles, but he was pretty sure the gleam in his eyes matched Claw's when he was scheming to set something on fire. No, Five insisted, grabbing the shirt out of Yamada's hand and putting it back on the rack. Hey, you're the one that said it didn't matter what clothes you wore. Yamada said, and yeah, he was definitely fucking with Five. How did Five end up here? Were they really no other teachers at that so-called top hero school in the country bullshit? Five wanted a refund. He wanted to strangle that damn rat. If I pick out my own clothes, can we please get a move on? Five asked. Sounds like a plan to me, Yamada said in a sing-song voice. Five rolled his eyes and grabbed some plain colored polo shirts and some kite plants, and some comfortable-looking pajamas. The hero couldn't fault him for those, could he? Grabbing enough to last a week, Five dumped them in their shopping cart. Are we good for now? Five asked. You forgot socks and underwear, Yamada reminds cheerfully. Five's face burned, mortified, before turning around and storming off to find the appropriate aisles. I wish he'd broken his other arm too, and maybe the rest of his body, so he could still be at the hospital like a racerhead. Anything was better than shopping with Yamada. He was worse than Allison, though admittedly not quite as bad as Claus. As it was, his arm was all healed and out of the cast, and he was supposed to stay with Yamada in a racerhead since they had a spare room and supposedly already understood Five's situation. There, Five said, tossing the appropriately sized packets into the cart. Are we good now? Not yet, little listener, Yamada said, holding up the shirts Five had tossed in earlier. It's time for a fashion show. No point buying clothes if we don't know they're gonna fit, right? Five stared at him incredulously. Never mind, he was worse than Claus. Closing his mouth, Five snatched the polo shirt from Yamada and used all his willpower not to grumble as they made their way to the changing rooms. The worst part was Five knew he was playing right into Yamada's hands, getting all riled up like this. The man was just like Claus, looking for any sort of reaction to feed off of. Probably thought it was funny to string Five along like a toddler. Well, two can play that game. If Yamada refused to see him as an equal, then maybe Five could use the fact that he saw Five as another child to his advantage. His first act of childish pettiness was to refuse to show Yamada what he looked like in the new clothes. He confirmed that they were the correct size, and were able to mix and match fairly well before changing back into his uniform shorts and oversized t-shirt from the hospital. Yamada pouted, and Five considered it a win. They fit, Five said, depositing all but one pair of pants in the cart, which went back onto the return racks. So, what do we need to do now? Well, before that, are you planning to do any training while you're here? Yamada asked, popping his chin in his hands. We're gonna stop by the school in a bit to make sure you have the proper access, and that includes gyms and training facilities. Five didn't even need to think about it. Of course I am. Well, then we'll need to get you your proper shoes for it, Yamada said, matter-of-factly. The school provides gym uniforms, but students bring their own shoes. What's wrong with my shoes? Five asked, honestly. Yamada raised an eyebrow and looked down at Five's brown loafers. Do you fight in those? Yes. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. He pat Five on the shoulder sympathetically. a literal tear in his eye. Don't worry, we'll get you proper footwear. Even though Five had already resigned himself to the fact that Yamada would do whatever he wanted, it didn't prepare him for the buckled, knee-high, striped-toe monstrosity that Yamada considered proper footwear. He wasn't even happy with them, muttering to themselves how they could be even spikier when Five scrounged up a pair of sensible black sneakers that Mike ended up going along with as, quote, a holdover while I order a better pair of boots online. Five was already annoyed at how much more comfortable the sneakers were compared to his trusty loafers. He didn't need Yamada fussing over a pair of boots Five wasn't even going to wear. Yamada refused to take the hint and spent the next several hours whisking Five away to various stores. It was definitely annoying. But halfway through the first store, Five decided to test how much he could really get away with. Hair gel, so Five could properly coif his hair, placing peanut butter and marshmallows in the shopping cart without breaking eye contact with Yamada, pointing out the weird limited edition flavors of junk food, and subsequently getting half a cart full of them. Yamada finally drew the line at Five getting a pocket knife, but the boots with sharp spikes were okay. Those are for self-defense, which made Five roll his eyes, especially after Yamada impulsively bought the newest PlayStation model and a handful of games when Five had offhandedly mentioned never playing a video game before. Between dropping off the supplies at Yamada's apartment and heading to UA, Five quietly exchanged his loafers for the sneakers. If Yamada noticed, he was smart enough not to comment on it. Getting the tour of the school was probably the highlight of Five's day. He didn't need to choose anything aside from the size of his uniform, and he could listen to every fifth word of Yamada's mouth, or so, to get the gist of the history of the building and the layout of everything. If nothing else, Five could appreciate the sheer size of the place. It was even bigger than the Hargreaves manor back home. Though he had to wonder if they actually used all its empty space. At the end of the tour, they had him change into UA's uniform and take a photo for his ID card, which apparently doubled as an access card. He needed to provide some information for it, which he filled out mindlessly before handing it to Yamada. Yamada, however, frowned as he took the form. You really want to put down number 5 for your given name? Yes. Five said, as if he was explaining it to a child. It's my legal name. The paper crinkled as Yamada's grip tightened to a fist. Five tensed, ready to grab onto his quirk, but Yamada's hand loosened again as he took a deep breath and let it out. Sounds like a pretty jerk move on your old man's part. There it was again. Yamada was getting upset on Five's behalf. Five shifted uncomfortably, not entirely understanding why that kept throwing him off so much. It wasn't like he didn't know his father was a self-absorbed asshole. Hearing it out loud from someone else shouldn't have been different. He named us in the order he got us. Five blurted out, though even as he said it, he wasn't sure why he did. Yamada's smile turned predatory as he said, Your dad sounds like a guy I'd love to have a karaoke contest with. Five would never admit it, but despite how silly the threat should have sounded, a chill ran down his spine. But enough about him, Yamada said, waving away his anger with a practiced cheer. Youth is all about reinventing yourself. Why not pick your own name? If I wanted a normal name, I would have taken the name Mom gave me, along with the rest of my siblings. He pointed out, Five suits me just fine. Your mother? She's a robot the old man made when our nannies kept quitting. Five explained with a shrug. Not sure how he managed it. She's a way better parent than he's ever been. I'm glad you have someone, at least. What's the name that she gave you? Five gave him a wary smile. Nice try. Before Yamada could argue the point further, the door to the room opened, and Nedzu scurried in. Ah, I'm glad you found a uniform that fit. Though normally it would be a few years before we were able to accept you as a student. Yes, well, special times, Five said, with a grim smile. Indeed. Nedzu agreed before holding up a pair of folders. I have a few things for both of you, Hisashi. Nedzu presented him with the thin folder and switched to Japanese, possibly considering the language more private in front of Five. Please pass that on to Shota when you get the chance. There's been a change in his class roster. A change? Yamada repeated, taking the folder. I thought Shota hadn't expelled anyone yet. Ah, no, it's not an expulsion. I thought Shota hadn't expelled anyone yet. Ah, no, it's not an expulsion. Nedzu clarified. The student in question requested a transfer to general studies after realizing he didn't have the constriction to fight villains. Ah, Yamada wrinkled his nose as he scanned the contents of the folder. A shame. He's a resourceful kid, but he's never really had a good attitude. Could have shapen up, but if he's given up this early... Indeed. Yamada agreed before turning to Five and switching to English. Well then, on to the next order of business. Nedzu handed a thicker file to Five. We see no reason for you not to continue your education while you're here, as there's no telling how long you'll be with us. In that folder is a series of tests for us to determine how far you've gotten in your various subjects in your schooling. It's perfectly normal if you don't know a question, simply skip it, and we'll tailor your education based on the gaps of your knowledge. Functionally, it'll handle as a self-study, but you'll have access to UA's entire staff to correct assignments and to help you if you have any questions. Does that sound acceptable? It does. Five replied, idly flipping through the pages to see the equations and word problems. Hopefully, all asked in English. I work well on my own. Excellent! Then let's go over a few logistical things while we're at it. Nedzu drilled on longer than Five would have liked, but Five came out of the conversation knowing what was going to be expected of him. He didn't appreciate being thrown into a classroom with other students so willy-nilly just because he needed healthier social interactions with other children. But it gave him access to the school's library and training facilities, and if nothing else, he was pretty sure those would be worth it. Last but not least, I want to give you this, Nedzu said, handing Five a thin, glassy device. Five turned it over his hand, brows furrowing. What's this? A cell phone, Five explained cheerfully. Though it can do much more than make a call, it's like a computer in your pocket. Very convenient, no? I'm sure Hisashi will be happy to go over the details of how to operate it with you. Five furrowed his brow, turning to the so-called cell phone over in his hand. It didn't look like any phone that Five had ever seen, but when the screen lit up in vivid color, displaying the time and UA's logo over a gigantic background, it suddenly hit Five all at once again that he was probably in the future now. Ben was gonna lose his shit. Yeah, not to worry, little listener. You'll be quoting memes and watching cat videos before you know it, Yamada said, playfully pinching Five's shoulder. Thank you, Five said politely before pocketing the phone. I appreciate it. Of course, Nedzu said, nodding his head to Five. Most everyone has a cell phone in this day and age, so it's only appropriate, just to make sure you use it responsibly. Five wasn't entirely sure what using a phone responsibly entailed, but he nodded like he did anyways and said, I will. Excellent, Nedzu said cheerfully. Well, I'm sure the two of you have plenty of settling in to do with this new arrangement, so I won't keep you any longer. Let me know if either of you have any issues. Five couldn't wait to be out of that room again, and apparently as they left, the shift was palatable to Yamada, who just laughed and said, "You really are an introvert, huh? Well, not to worry. You've got some comfy pajamas and a weighted blanket waiting for you back home." Five scoffed and rolled his eyes, but he couldn't help but privately looked forward to the idea. Maybe he'd be able to slip off to his room early. Oh my god, I was questioning this goddamn title. I'm like, spiked boots are best bought online? What the fuck? I love how Five thinks, alright, Yamada is conniving. He has such embedded trust issues, and it's very interesting to see him go through this because it's not even like he's registering it as like, okay, I have trust issues. It's literally registering as, I don't need to trust anyone. I don't trust anyone. And he's not conscious of his trust issues. A lot of times, some people can be conscious of it and sometimes not. And this is subtle trust issues because he is reverting back to people he knows. He's like, all right, this person is just doing this to get a rise out of me. I also love how we switched up that whole traumatized child doesn't want to buy things to be an inconvenience to fucking Five buying the most mundane, weird ass shit, trying to fucking get a rise out of Yamada, right? It's like, all right, marshmallows, no reaction. Okay, what about this? What about that? Huh? What about this? A pocket knife. That's when Yamada draws a line, and then freaking the fact that freaking Five is putting things in the cart with like a bunch of snacks, foods, random shit that, you know, he probably doesn't absolutely necessarily need. And I love how Yamada not only buys it for him, Yamada's like, oh, you've never played video games? Here's a PlayStation and a bunch of games. We're about to play. Oh my god, I love that. Like, instead of being like, hey, maybe let's buy the things you need, Yamada's like, huh? Unnecessary stuff? Let's go. I love that. I love that subtle switch of like the typical thing in found family that at least I've read in this fandom is that normally the child getting adopted is really reluctant to buy new stuff, which is understandable. A lot of the times these children come from, most of the time it's like bad Inko, right? Or dead Inko, right? In this case of bad Inko, it's always in the sense of like, for example, a high-pitched cry for help. Izuku does not want to buy more than what he needs, and even what he needs, he's like, I don't need that. I could live without that, because he doesn't want to seem a burden. And in other bad Inko cases, it's again, I don't want to seem a burden, or I don't deserve this, right? And in the sense of dead Inko, it's I'm uncomfortable. You shouldn't have to buy this for me. I don't want to burden you, right? Not in the sense of I've always been a burden. I don't want to burden you more, but in the sense of I'm already putting stress on you because you have to take me in. I don't want to burden you more, right? It comes from a stem of I don't want to inconvenience and considerate emotions for the other people than in a sense of trauma response. It's more of a sense of I don't want to cause you more problems than I'm already causing you. I am conscious of the fact that this could be financially, or in the case of like debt Inko, they can get more stuff, but they only get the necessary. Because they either don't trust Aizawa and Yamada, or they don't feel like they should get more than they need because it's a temporary thing or stuff like that, right? Necessarily a trauma thing, but it's just, it makes sense. So in this sense, freaking Five getting everything is the most hilarious shit to me. Just I want that. I need that. I need more of that. Just Five is just like, huh, okay, two can play at that game. All right, let's see. Okay, that didn't budge. What about this? Huh, and what about this? What if I just throw a bunch of snacks in there? Ah, I see. You know, instead of saying no to this, you're just gonna buy me a fucking PlayStation and get... Okay. Which, Five, I think if he would have done that with Aizawa, I think Aizawa would still let him buy like a bunch of, you know, small little knickknacks and stuff like that, but would draw a line. And probably wouldn't have bought him the PlayStation. I don't know. At least that's what I feel. But shopping with Yamada is like, I feel like Yamada's like, you want that? Bet. We have the money. Bet. And Aizawa's like more logical, is like, all right, let's buy this first, and then we'll buy you that afterwards. This is the pure necessities and stuff like that. So I find that hilarious. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.